Okay guys, so the last couple of videos we were dealing with slope, and now we want to start using the slope to write linear equations. Okay, so there's three things we have to use here. Number one, okay, the point slope formula. Okay, that's what we use to write linear equations. Okay, so if you have the slope, which is m, okay, right here, and you have one point, any point at all that's on the line, okay, you can do this. So it would be y minus the y coordinate of that point equals the slope times the quantity of x minus the x coordinate of that point. Okay, so we use this guy to write linear equations. Okay, so we use it to write linear equations. Okay. All right, now, there are two accepted forms of linear equations. Okay, this guy right here, which we call the slope-intercept form, which I know you guys all saw in the past, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b ends up being where the line crosses the y-axis. It's called the y-intercept. And then this guy, standard form, which you see a lot of in higher math. So when you go to Algebra 2, you'll see this a lot. And when you're in pre-calculus and calculus, you see that a lot. Okay, and they're just two different forms of the same equation. Now in standard form, notice it's not y equals like slope-intercept form. You have the two terms with x and y on the left-hand side. You have a constant on the right-hand side, and these numbers have to be integers. Okay, have to be integers. Okay, so that means no fractions, okay, and no decimals. Okay, all right, so I want to throw a couple examples at you for, what do we mean by when something's in slope-intercept form and something's in standard form. Okay, slope-intercept form. Okay, slope-intercept form. It's always y equals every single time. So you might have something like y equals 2x plus 5. Okay, so your slope is 2 and your y-intercept is 5. That's all it is. Or you might have something like y equals 7 fourths x minus 10. So our slope is 7 fourths and our y-intercept is negative 10. Okay, or you might get y equals negative 6x, okay, plus 3.5. So again, the slope would be negative 6 and the y-intercept is 3.5. But notice all of these are y equals and everything else is on the right-hand side. Now, standard form, okay, is entirely different. Okay, standard form, you have to have the term with x and a term with y on the left-hand side. So we might have something like negative 3x plus 7y equals, and there's a constant on the right-hand side, I don't know, 9. Okay, and notice that we have nothing but integers. You can't have any fractions or decimals. Okay, so something like 14x minus y equals a negative 5. Another example. Term with x and y are on the left, constants on the right. We have no fractions or decimals whatsoever. Okay, you might have x plus 11y equals 0. Again, x and y is on the left, constant on the right, no fractions or decimals. Okay, so what we do in these problems is we're going to write a linear equation and then we're going to give it in both forms. Our final answer will be in both forms. So we'll have one equation in slope-intercept form and one equation in standard form. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these guys. Okay, the first type of situation we could be in is where they give us, okay, the slope. Here it is right here. Slope is 3/5, and they give us a point on the line. Okay, right there. okay? So your slope is 3/5, and the point they give you, which in the point slope formula, they write it as x sub 1, y sub 1, okay, would be 15 negative 7, like that. All right, so you always start with the same thing. You start with the point slope formula right here. We have to use this guy, point slope formula, okay, to start, okay, these types of problems. Okay, so we start with that point slope formula, y minus y sub 1 equals the slope, which is m, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1, and then we substitute in. So y sub 1 is negative 7, so we get y minus a negative 7 equals the slope, which is 3/5, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1, which is 15. Okay, so this is where we start, okay? And we have to come up with two equations, one in slope-intercept form and one in standard form. Okay, so the first thing I always do is slope-intercept form. Okay, so I would start off here, I'd take this guy and change it into y plus 7. And then I would distribute the 3/5, so we get 3/5 x minus 3/5 times 15, and this is where this guy comes in handy, okay, will be 9. Okay, now to be in slope-intercept form, y has to be all by itself. It has to be y equals. So notice I have to subtract 7 from both sides to do that. Okay, so I get y equals 3/5 x minus 16. Okay, this right here is slope-intercept form right there. Okay, so that's in slope-intercept form. So I take care of this. Now I want to go to standard form. Okay, so now to go to standard form, you have to get rid of any fractions right off the get-go. Okay, so I take this and I get rid of the fractions first. Okay, so if we take this guy, y equals 3/5 x minus 16, what I have to do is I have to multiply through by the least common denominator of all of the fractions in the equation. So obviously this equation only has one fraction. Okay, so I multiply through by 5. Okay, so that guy is your LCD, your least common denominator. So when that happens, I get to distribute that 5 to everything inside. So I get 5y, 5 times y is 5y, equals 5 times 3/5 is just 3, so I get 3x minus 5 times 16 is 80. Okay, so I got rid of all the fractions. Now I have to get the x and y on the same side. So the y is already on the left, so just bring the x over, the term with x. So it's positive here, so when I move it over it becomes negative. So I get negative 3x plus 5y equals, that would be a negative 80. Okay, and that is my standard form. Okay, that's standard form. Okay, now these two equations describe the exact same line, they're just in different forms. Okay, this is slope-intercept form of the equation, and that's standard form of the equation. And we have to get good with working with both of them. Okay? All right, let's try another one of those guys. Okay, notice it's still the first situation where they give you the slope and they give you a point on the line. Okay, so your slope is negative 4/3. Okay, and your point, this, x sub 1, y sub 1, okay, is negative 2, 8. Okay, so again, we start with our point slope formula, y minus y sub 1 equals the slope times the quantity of x minus x sub 1, and then we just substitute in. So I get y minus, well, y sub 1 is 8, okay, equals the slope, which is m, negative 4/3, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1 is negative 2, like that. All right, now I would want to change this to plus first, okay? So I'm going to get a negative 4 thirds times the quantity of x plus 2, right, like that, and then bring down that y minus 8. All right, now I have to distribute the negative 4 thirds, okay, through this. Okay, so just bring down the y minus 8, and I'm going to get a negative 4 thirds x minus 8 thirds, like that. Okay, and then I have to add 8 to both sides, okay, to get y by itself. So I get y equals negative 4 thirds x, okay, and then I take this guy, and remember that's a negative 8 thirds, so I have to go negative 8 thirds plus 8, okay, and I get 5 1/3, and you could leave it as 5 1/3, or you could change it to an improper fraction, doesn't make any difference. I'm going to change it to an improper fraction, so I'd get 16 thirds. Okay, now this is, notice it's y equals, so this is slope-intercept form. Okay, so I have that. Okay, now I want to take that, okay, because we have slope-intercept form, now we want to come up with standard form. Okay, so again, I'm going to take this guy, and the first thing I always do, just like the last one, is get rid of the fractions. Okay, so I have to multiply through by the least common denominator. Now again, there's more than one fraction here, but notice they have the exact same denominator. So I multiply through by 3. That's my LCD, my least common denominator. Got to multiply everything by 3. So 3 times y is 3y. 3 times negative 4 thirds is negative 4. And 3 times 16 thirds is 16. And all the fractions are gone. Now I have to get the x and y on the same side. Well, the y is already on the left, so just bring the x over. Okay, so if it's negative on the right side, when I move it over, it becomes positive. So I get 4x plus 3y equals 16, and that right there is my standard, okay, form. Okay, so again, these two equations represent the same line. It's just two different forms of the equation, slope-intercept and standard. Okay, one last problem to do here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, again, okay, my slope is -1, and my point, this x sub 1, y sub 1, okay, is 9, -3. Okay. All right, so I go to my point slope formula. Y minus y sub 1 equals the slope, m, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. And we substitute in, so I get y minus, well, y sub 1 is -3, equals the slope, which is -1, times the quantity of x minus x sub 1, which is 9. Now, the nice thing about this is, notice I don't have any fractions here. Okay, so when I go from slope-intercept form to standard form, it's going to be a lot easier to do. So y minus a -3 becomes y plus 3. And then I distribute a -1, so I get the opposite of x, or negative x, plus 9. And then all I have to do is just subtract 3, okay, to get y by itself, and I get y equals -x plus 6. And there is my slope-intercept form. Okay, notice again, it is y equals. Okay, now we go to standard form, and notice that I don't have any fractions to get rid of. Okay, so all I have to do is take that -x and move it over. So I start with what I have originally, no fractions to get rid of, so just bring the x term over to the left-hand side, so x and y are both on the left. So if it starts as negative on the right-hand side and moves over, it becomes positive. So I get x plus y equals 6, and that's standard form. Okay, so that is my standard form. And that's all you got to do. Okay, so we got a jump on this stuff. Okay, and I know this is where, you know, Some people remember some of this stuff, some people don't. Some students remember a lot of it, some students remember very little of it. So it takes practice, okay? All right, so we're gonna wrap up that video, and I'll probably have one more for you either today or tomorrow.